Good evening, and thank you for being here to hear about the inquiry process I went through this year as part of BTSA. My name is Lisha Brunache, and I'm a teacher at Mission Hills High School. I teach both history and English there, but I chose to do my inquiry on a group of 9th grade students in a college prep English language arts class. My inquiry question was, will direct teaching of close reading strategies increase student performance on argumentative writing responses? The goal I selected was that 90% of students would score a 3 or a 4, or basically achieve proficiency on an argumentative writing task. The writing task was aligned with the Smarter Balance new style of performance tasks. The key shifts identified in the Common Core State Standards for English Language Arts are really what influenced me to pursue this inquiry. In addition, close reading has been a buzzword lately, and I wanted to really investigate the skill of close reading, find out the best way to teach it, and really assess whether or not close reading was going to translate into better writers that could perform these critical thinking tasks. My first task was really to understand close reading and what it was. Park had a really good definition that I used. They said essentially close reading means reading to uncover layers of meaning that lead to deep comprehension. They clarify that it means engaging with a text, reading deliberately, ultimately understanding the text as a whole. I found an article by a woman named Nancy Boyles that really helped me understand what it meant to use close reading in an English language arts classroom. In the past, close reading was thought of as a skill where students sometimes made personal connections to the text or used their prior knowledge to come to understandings. This close reading emphasizes the need for text-dependent questioning. Nancy first clarifies and emphasizes the push for close reading, acknowledging the shift in rationale. She also provides tips on how teachers should implement close reading and mentions pitfalls to avoid. From this article, I really gleaned a variety of tips and tricks that I use when developing my own lessons. Most importantly, Nancy maintains that teaching is about transfer. This idea of transfer is further solidified by Douglas Fisher and Nancy Frey's teacher and student responsibility graphic. This reminded me to keep in mind throughout that the overall goal was to teach students to be independent learners and to have this close reading strategy on their own. After researching, I began to piece together a unit plan. I targeted standards and sub-objectives. I continued to research, shaping my teaching based on formative assessments I gave my students. The most important thing that happened during my action plan and research timeline was collaborations with my 9th grade teaching team. Together with the other 9th grade teachers, I was able to come up with a performance task that aligned perfectly with what I was trying to do and also served as a really data-rich assessment that I could get a lot of feedback out of. I tried to target both reading and writing standards, all that were tied to argumentative style reading and writing. The objectives I chose came together to really reflect the step-by-step nature of the instruction. I started with lower level, less cognitively demanding tasks like identifying parts of an argument, and I eventually built towards writing. I really tried to mirror Bloom's taxonomy with the sequencing of my lesson objective, with the rationale that each lesson built upon the past, guiding students along kind of a staircase that eventually would lead them to the most difficult task, which was composing an argumentative response. I selected 3 focus students to really monitor in depth throughout the process. The first of which was an English learner. Her name was Jessica. She was a CELT level intermediate. The second focus student was Megan. She had an IEP and had an identified specific learning disability. The third focus student I selected was Travis. I chose him because he was an advanced student and I really wanted to represent the wide variety of learners that can be together in one college prep English classroom. My first step was administering the entry-level assessment, and the results you can see here on the graph on my screen. I used a rubric to determine proficiency level. I had no students scoring advanced. I had about a quarter of students scoring proficient and a big chunk of them at basic level. So really I wanted to focus on moving those basic and below basic students towards proficiency. Specifically, my focus students, starting with Jessica, scored basic and proficient on the entry-level assessment. Jessica scored basic as per the rubric that I also used for the summative assessment. Megan also scored basic, or a 2. She didn't provide facts and details to back up her claim, which was the same scenario with Jessica's writing. Travis scored proficient from the get-go. He already provided support and evidence for his claims and was able to address a counterargument and disprove it. So his goal was really to move beyond proficiency to the advanced level. I'd like to show you a short video clip that kind of shows what type of close reading was happening in my classroom. One lesson from the lesson series involved performing a close read on 2 articles with opposing viewpoints regarding climate change. Students were asked to highlight evidence of emotional appeals in one color highlighter, evidence of logical appeals in another. They also had to mark a portion that helped them understand the claim. They had to circle the counterargument. In addition, they also responded to guided text-dependent questions in the margins. At this point, students were learning to annotate or perform a close read using the guidelines I created. Later, they'd have to do this on their own and determine their own way of close reading and what worked best for them. After a series of lessons, I went ahead and administered the summative assessment, which was the performance task I mentioned earlier. The data was very promising, although I didn't quite make it to my initial goal. The data that I'm most proud of is the amount of basic students that were reduced. If you remember from the pre-assessment, there was 61% of my class at basic, and I had reduced that to only 19%, taking all students out of the below basic category. My focus students all improved 1 proficiency level each. Even Travis, who started at proficient, was able to move up the ladder to advanced. I learned a great deal through this process about both my students and myself as a teacher. In terms of students, I really found out that giving students that toolbox or those strategies to tackle difficult texts, for example, the strategy of close reading, was what was going to help them meet these rigorous demands put forth by the Common Core standards. In terms of myself as a teacher, I really was able to better understand the Common Core standards. I was able to practice some new techniques and really gain some insight on how to teach close reading. I found modeling to be the most important and effective strategy to use when teaching this skill. Overall, the inquiry process was a valuable and eye-opening learning experience for me. and it led me to develop additional goals for my future teaching. Next year, I hope to find ways to make close reading a more active, a more collaborative strategy, and I want to find ways to integrate close reading into the technology that we now have at our schools. I hope you enjoyed learning about the inquiry process I went through, and thank you so much for watching.